What does it mean to offboard or offboarding in the context of the business owner of your SME business? In today's episode, I'm talking to Michele Hecken, who coined the term offboarding for business owners to extract themselves out of the day-to-day operations of their business, how they can create a business that will run without their daily involvement, and so they can focus their time working 4 to 10 hours working on the business. If this is something that's of interest to you, you might want to download our document, Eliminating Owner Dependence in Your Business. It's a great read, give you some tips on how you can extract yourself from your business and get the most from your life's work. Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to helping business owners to prepare for exit so you can maximize value and then exit on your terms. This is the Exit Insights podcast presented by Succession Plus. I'm Daryl Bates-Brownsword, and today I'm joined by Michele Hecken. Michele is, a recovering business owner. She's exited her business. She's coined this great term. She learned how to offboard herself as a business owner, and now she's going to share that story because this podcast is all about learning from what other business owners have done and how they exited their business and got the most from their life's work. So, Michele, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Daryl. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's pretty cool. You're in the UK. I'm in Canada. And here we are having a wonderful conversation. I'm honored to be here, Daryl.
Wonderful. Well, it's definitely not something we could have done when I first started out consulting. I think, back then it was even pre-Skype. So it would have been a very expensive long distance phone call, and it would have been hard to make happen. So, Michele, tell us your story. Like, what's your background? You started your own business. Why don't you give us a bit of background, and we'll just dig into that and figure out what you learned and how you figured out these offboarding. Because I love the term offboarding. I've never heard of offboarding being applied to the actual owners of the business. We normally talk about succession and then exit. So I'm really keen to learn what nuances, what's different about it, and if there is a difference.
Awesome. Okay, that's a lot to unpack, but I want to start with a segue. That was really cool because you said, several years ago, us, having this call would have been very difficult and very costly. And that's exactly what I did when I started my business. I had lived in Germany, so I'm half Canadian, half German, lived in Europe, moved to Alberta, Canada. And what I did with the invention of a fax machine is I served my clients in Europe, providing translations for them overnight. So I used the time difference. I used cutting edge technology, fax machine. And yes, very expensive long distance calls. I remember staying up to like 12 or 1 o'clock at night, not just because of the time difference, but because also it was cheaper to call then. So that's actually how I started my business. I was like in my early 20s. I had 2 kids under 3 when we moved, and I knew nothing about business, nothing really. I just knew my clients needed translations. Translation market was underserved. It needed to be fast, and it was the opposite of fast because back then translations were always an afterthought. They still are now. It's not so much of an issue now, but back then, if you didn't plan ahead, everything was urgent. So that's how I got started with a fax machine overseas, no clients, new country, knew nothing about business. So yeah, it was a fun start.
And it's a classic entrepreneurial start, because one of the things we do is we talk to business owners, and I'm sure this applies to you, is how and why they started their business. And there's 90% of cases, my empirical data research tells me that 90% of cases, they've either identified a problem that needs to be solved in the marketplace. So the marketplace I'm in, this problem is an issue for a lot of people. So why don't I address that and create a business around solving that problem? Or they've already got a problem, a solution to a problem. They go, hey, I can provide this solution into a different marketplace. And so with your transferring, your changing country, you've gone, hang on a sec, I've got I guess effectively a new market and a new problem, the double whammy, just to up the risk a bit.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's what we do as entrepreneurs, right? And I will tell you, Daryl, everybody thought I was crazy. Like I was, like I said, in my early 20s, new to the country. I had two kids under three, and I got so much um, feedback unsolicited that was like, oh, that's so nice that you're doing that, you have something little to do on the side. And the other thing I heard is, unless you speak 10 different languages, you can't be successful in this. Like, the amount of crap people tell you. And for entrepreneurs, it's, yes, we have to listen to mentors and we have to listen to people, but let's listen to people who have actually done it instead of people who, really would never have the courage to even step out of their comfort zone. So, I heard all of it. I heard it's
Yeah.
like, you're never going to make it. You're going to be a bad mom. You're going to be a bad entrepreneur. Your business is going to fail. And I heard all of that. So to your point, I think a lot of entrepreneurs hear this noise from, mostly from people who will not step up and do and take those risks and create something from scratch. Right. So luckily I ignored it.
Yeah, look, you just reminded me with the feedback in inverted commas. I haven't sort of thought of that for a long time. But yeah, as entrepreneurs, we often do get a lot of feedback. And it's, as you point out, it's always from someone who's sitting comfortably in their seat or home, with the comfort and security of a paid position. And they feel like the transition to owning your own business, yeah, on paper, it's real easy. It's if you understand business, it's quite easy to do. It's pretty straightforward. And they seem to forget the part that when you're living it yourself, life becomes so much more intense, just because of stress and pressure of everything you have to do to get all those ducks in a row. And I guess moving country and two kids under three, like
On purpose.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay. And
go ahead.
so that's the business. So that business grew into something significant by the sounds of it.
Yes. And to go back to your kind of first opening of the conversation about my story and what is offboarding, and that, you'd never heard that term. It's because I invented it in the meaning of firing yourself from your job and recreating your job description, because we have to let go and reinvent ourselves. And where that came from for me, my business was very successful from the get-go because I solved that problem. And then very soon I found myself working 20-hour days. I was, ordering food in. I always had a rule. I'd always have dinner with my family and I would always read bedtime stories. So those were the two things, no matter what, that I would always do. But I didn't really have time to cook. We do the bedtime stories but I didn't really spend much time. And I was so burnt out working these 20-hour days that I decided, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. And again, conventional wisdom, even my business mentors told me, well, you can't really do both. And I decided I was going to do both and that I was going to have my cake and eat it too. So I very early on invented what I now call the art of offboarding. I didn't call it that then. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know other people didn't really do that. I just knew I needed to follow what was right for my life because I wanted to be a good mom and I wanted to run a successful business. And I just needed to find a way to do both. So I did, and I created this system and I set up my business basically to run without me. Because at some point then later on, I became a single mom. And so I needed to be there for my family. I wanted to be there for my family and also my business. So fast forward to before the sale, I know you're going to want to dig into that a little bit more. I was working probably 4 to 10 hours a week for the last 15 years that I owned my business, and it grew faster and it scaled faster. So I'll leave that dish open for you there, Daryl.
Okay. So I've got that. I'm just going to park that for a sec because what I want to dig into, Michelle, is this concept of offboarding, and because it's something that you slipped in as if it was really easy to do. Yet the reality is, so many business owners are stuck on about £1 million, $1 million revenue, and you just see a lot of them that have sort of capped out, maxed out there for a number of years, and it's often because what's that, a million turnover relates to about 10 people in a rough rule of thumb. And 10 people, if you think of the span of control for one business owner, they can manage 10 people and everyone has a direct relationship with them, the business owner, which
Right.
makes them the center of everything. Everything has to go through them. Every decision, every instruction goes through the business owner. They are a key resource in the business, a linchpin, padlock, bottleneck, call it what you like.
Yeah.
How did you realize, and how did you grow out of that and pull yourself out of that? Because that's that lock, if you like, that many business owners get stuck, and it forces them into working longer and longer hours, and they can't see any other solution, so they just halt the business growth there. What did you do? What was the aha moment for you where you realized, I've got to do this differently? What?
Right. Um, well, to be honest, I was young and I focused on what I needed first for
Right.
myself and for my family. And that basically dictated the course. And just to kind of go back a little bit, we're always told as entrepreneurs nowadays that we need to work on our business and not
Yep.
in it, right? But nobody shows you how to do it. Nobody
Exactly.
gives you a roadmap. All we hear is you got to delegate more. Okay. And if we go back to your scenario with $1 million business owner, you're right. They've created it. They know everything and they get stuck there because it's fear of losing control. Like they've worked so hard for many years to get to that magical $1 million mark. Right. And there's just so much fear of for giving responsibility to somebody else. So then we delegate tasks so that we can keep control. And what we're doing is we're keeping our business stuck. So I talk a lot about offboarding versus delegating. And what that meant for me was I didn't want to give people tasks. And that's maybe my personality because it made me nervous. It made me anxious. It made me want to micromanage because it feels great at first. It's like, oh, I don't have to do this now. And then you do it again. And then you give somebody else something. And if you have 10 people, you know, eventually you're going to wake up in the middle of the night trying to remember who you gave what to, when it's due, do they have the right instructions? And you get nervous. And guess what? You go in and start micromanaging. So the big difference between offboarding and delegating is when you're offboarding, you're taking an intact responsibility and giving ownership and agency to that person. And when people are in that $1 million mark, that's when I hired my COO and or promoted my COO. And again, everybody told me I was crazy. So back to your question, what did I realize? I realized that for me, it was much easier to spend time and train and coach somebody than to keep tabs on everybody kind of, meddling in what I was responsible for. And that was the big shift, is letting that go, putting accountability systems in place, but letting people have ownership and agency. And I think that is the crux where most entrepreneurs at that point really get stuck. And I was lucky. Well, let's call it lucky. Maybe it's just who I was. I didn't really have a choice. Scarcity sharpens the mind. I needed to be there for my kids. I needed to find a way to figure this out. And also, let's be honest, on the human side, I was too lazy to do all of that stuff myself. I know that sounds awful. And when I tell people I'm lazy, they're like, you're not lazy. Like you're the most creative, industrious person that I know. It's like, yeah, because I'm working on all the things that I love. But when I'm working on stuff that is not my forte, that I don't love, I don't feel good. I feel lazy. So listening to that when we're trying to grow our business, that's the most important thing because we only have one life. We can have 10 businesses, but only one life.
So, and I think Gerber touches on this, and we attribute the working on your business to Gerber and his book, The E-Myth, which is the first book I was aware of working on your business.
Great book.
And he says, look, you need to work on your business, you need to systemize, and I guess it's around that 1 million mark where you've got to start. I call it documenting your business or structuring your business, and like up to 10 people in your business, you can have a business without structure because everyone comes to you. You don't need it. It's all done on relationship. If you want to go to a million plus, that's when you need to start, recruiting and appointing a management layer, as you did. And if you've got a management layer, you've now got a second pivot point where communications can get lost and misinterpreted. So you need to start documenting. And the best way to start that is with some sort of organizational structure of going, well, Michelle does this and Daryl does that, and make sure that you get it all documented, and then job descriptions, right, and getting all of that. Is that kind of the path you followed?
It's a little bit kind of like that. Except what I did, and I think that's a pivotal point when I work with clients today that I see over and over again. As founders, as owners, as entrepreneurs, we don't have a job description. So we don't know, we're just doing everything, right? That's what you described. Everything comes to you and you solve the problems. And let's be honest, it feels a little bit good if we have the answers, right? It feeds our ego. I mean, it feels great.
Needs me. I'm important.
That's exactly right. And then we say, okay, I need to hire somebody. And when you're around 1 million, typically, what do? Okay, who do I need? Do I need an EA? Do I need a COO or an integrator or somebody to run the business? And when you're at 1 million, most people will tell you don't do that, as my mentors told me not to do that. But I think the path for me that I encourage other entrepreneurs to take when I coach them or when I speak is be clear first what's on your plate, because you don't have a job description. So you don't even know what you're doing. And it's not just about knowing what you're doing. It's knowing whether that gives you energy and you love doing it. And you also need to know what's the value of this activity to my business. Doing a certain thing when you have $100,000 or pounds in revenue is very different than doing that same thing at 1 million, because at 1 million, that same thing that you're doing may not make any sense for you to do, and somebody else could do it better. So taking an inventory of what's on my plate as the business owner, what do I love doing, and what do I not? And what's the value to the company? What do I absolutely need to keep, even if I don't love it, because it's my responsibility and I need to own it, and what is not? And then that becomes the job description for who you need to hire next. And the whole question of, does it need to be an EA? Does it need to be a COO? Most entrepreneurs are asking that question way too early. Let's see what there is that you can offboard. Maybe it's in a step. Maybe you need a part-time position, but we just get this idea in our head that to work on the business, we have to immediately hire people. And yes, but randomly hiring people, if you're not absolutely clear on what your role is, you're going to hire the wrong people. Then you're going to step on each other's toes because that other person has a job description, but you still don't have one. And then what? Then you get the crossover. So, I think that's what was really different for me. And I recommend that. Like, don't take canned job descriptions. Like, look at what you're doing and look at what the business needs and what you need.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen doing this, Michelle, is you're absolutely right. Most business owners, and when they do start writing job descriptions, they create a job description for everyone else in the business but themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and I
of
go,
course.
Okay, so what does that mean? Well, I'm really busy. I'm doing stuff. yeah, what you're doing is you're fighting fires. That's why you're stressed and maxed out,
Yeah.
because you haven't allocated all the tasks in the business, and all those things that aren't allocated, people aren't doing. So they end up in your lap. So
Yeah.
you end up just chasing your tail, doing everything else, and you're
Yeah.
fighting fires. And because you don't have a work plan that you're working to, these things are just ending up in your lap unplanned, and that's what's causing stress. And you're having to work 100 hours a week just to get it, or try and stay on top of it. Uh,
Exactly.
so
Exactly. And the analogy also that I like to use, if we don't have clarity of what's causing the stress, right? If you're like you just described, so everybody's coming to you, you're putting out fires or whacking moles and just reacting. Did you remember that carnival game where you had to
yeah,
whack the moles and then they just pop up? That's what it feels like sometimes, right? And so when we're doing that and we're stressed, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that come to me specifically to say, I'm working 80 hours a week, I can't do this anymore, right? And the first thing I say, okay, what are you working on? Well, I don't know. Okay, why are you stressed? I don't know. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's one thing, two things, three things, four things, five things, and they all mesh together in like what feels like a ball of wool with many different colors. And then they're trying to, get this ball of stress out of their system when really we just need to pull the orange string first. Then we pull the blue string. And when we're trying to solve that problem with a big ball of wool in front of us, what we end up doing is we're kind of pulling it from the inside and it gets all knotted up. So we
yeah,
need to have clarity. We need to see the colors in that ball of wool first, which is everything that's contributing to our stress.
brilliant. So, Michelle, when you started realizing that you needed to offboard some of the tasks, and what a lot of business owners do is they tell me one of the exercises that they've had business coaches help them with is start to track all of the tasks that they're doing on a week by week basis. Write them down. So to get the clarity, you need to write down the tasks. And when they analyzed the task, they started to have a look at them all, and then they figured out what their actually hourly rate was. So if they're working 80 hours a week and how much money they're taking out of the business, they just divide one by the other, and they can get their actual hourly rate, not what they think they're paying themselves.
Yeah.
And then they match the list against their hourly rate, and they go, any tasks on this list that I can pay someone less than what I'm paying myself as my hourly rate, they tell me that's a great way, a great first step of starting to go, well, what should I be giving someone else? If I'm going to employ someone, if I'm going to get a VA or some sort of person that's going to help me out, here's the list of tasks that I can get, hand over, delegate, as a first point of control, because those are lower value tasks than what I'm doing, and chances are I don't like them anyway.
Yeah.
So there's a good start. But the thing that's going through my head is, okay, so we grow, we can do that. We might get in a part-time marketing person. We'll get in a bookkeeper. We'll get some sort of person that'll help me, do the admin side of whatever my production
Yeah.
capability is. And I'll grow my business and I'll get it to about £1 million or $1 million in revenue. At which point I need to start employing managers, management level people. And if I'm going to start employing management level people, I've kind of hit or entered, what I sometimes refer to as no man's land. Because if I've got one manager, I'm really not getting the full benefit of having the management team. So if I'm
Right.
going to go down and go beyond that 1 million mark, I really need to commit to going all the way to, I don't know, around about 10 mil, I guess. So by the time I've got a business of 10 mil, I've got a full management team that are fully leveraged, fully optimized, all with teams under them. So I've spanned or gone across no man's land. I've now got a full management team or a leadership team with teams under them, and I or the leaders can operate fully in that CEO role. So there's a bit of a commitment that if I'm going to jump in, if I'm going to employ my first manager, if I'm really going to get the benefit and get those profitability and valuation boosts, I really need to go all the way to about that 10 mil. Is that the same as your experience? Is that what you went through? Was it conscious, or am I
Actually,
just
no,
talking academic nonsense?
I went through something like that very early on, but not really. So I think that, first of all, that approach, sure, it makes sense. It takes way too long. to write down your tasks weeks over weeks over weeks. So there's a much easier way to get to that. Secondly, you're writing down your tasks, and now you're getting a part-time marketing person and you're getting a part-time admin. And guess who's managing all those people? You, because you haven't given them responsibility and accountability where they can just report to you on progress once a week. Okay. Because you still own that responsibility. You're just getting a little bit of help. But as entrepreneurs, it's our mindset. I mean, we are, even if we're only physically working 5 or 10 hours a week, we are still always thinking about our business. And that headspace needs to be free and clear if we're wanting to really strategically grow our business. And that's, I think, one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is like, I'm going to delegate this to this person and give all these tasks away. But my headspace, my mental space is getting smaller and smaller, and my mental load is getting heavier and heavier. So now I'm not as effective as a leader because now I'm still managing all the people doing the tasks. And I also wanted to touch on what you said with the calculation. I do that calculation differently, right? Because it's random what entrepreneurs pay themselves. Okay. So it's loaded with a lot of shoulds and beliefs and guilt and, comparisons that are not really necessary. So the way I look at it is take your revenue, your total revenue, not what you're paying yourself. Take your revenue and divide it by the hours you work. And then that gives you a number of what your time is really worth. And basically that's, if you're operating on a 50% gross margin, just to get a little technical and say you have a $5 million company, don't double check this math. I'm doing this from memory, but if you have a $5 million revenue company, you're working 60 hours a week, your time is worth, I don't know, $1,600 an hour. Quick math. Not exactly, but so now, okay, you can apply that, but that's not really true. The way I like to look at it is, if I'm a $5 million revenue company, then I need to bring at least twice the value of my time to the business for it to just maintain. So if I'm operating on a 50% margin at a $5 million company and my time is worth by division $1,600, every conversation I have, everything I touch should bring at least $3,500 in revenue. And that's just for break even. So if we frame it that way and say, okay, if I want to grow to X, well, then I need to create this value of say $5 or $6 or $7 or $8,000. I mean, I have a client, she has like a 9-figure business. And you can imagine what that prioritization looks like if they're going into a meeting with a supplier. Well, they need to come out with that value instead of a random value that we're kind of giving ourselves. So I think the focus on that division that you just said makes it too small. That's why we end up giving away tasks, because it's like, okay, if it's less than $100 an hour, I'm going to give it away. But what we should say, if I can't make $5,000 an hour with my time on average, then I shouldn't be doing that. Does that make sense? A bit of a different perspective, paradigm shift.
Yeah, look, what I'm hearing, Michelle, is that the number one, the business owner needs to be aware of the value of their time.
Yeah.
And how they figure out that, and the context to do it is, I guess there's a couple of ways to achieve that. But they've got to be really aware of the value of their time so that they can be deliberate around where they spend their time.
Exactly. It's
Yep.
not about
And
the money, it's about the value. What impact can
yep,
I make in an hour of my time? Exactly.
yep.
Love it.
So what can I do with the value of my time? And you touched on, and you slipped it in a couple of times now, and you said, look, I was working 4 to 10 hours a week on my business. So what did you do to free up your time to allow you to work 4 to 10 hours on your business and allow the other people that you had employed to get on with their jobs and their roles, and for you to feel that business was in control, because you mentioned, delegate and maintain control. And what I took that to mean, and let's just clarify, it's not about you being a control freak. It's about the business processes being in control and not you
Yes.
controlling the tasks and functions, right?
Absolutely. And there are, to me, the biggest role of the leader, the CEO, the entrepreneur is to build an amazing culture, grow
Yep.
revenue,
Yep.
okay? And expand the business. And the third thing for me is, my goal is always to have people working 80% of the time on the things they love. So when we talk about offboarding for entrepreneurs, the same principle can be applied in your teams, right? So back to, how do I not give up control? You're absolutely right. It's accountability, agency, and systems. Okay. So I was very clear on what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do. And that took some time. I mean, this offboarding system came with a lot of friction and conversations with my COO, where she made me aware. It's like, I thought I owned that. Why are you asking me about this randomly? I'm like, oh, I'm just checking in. But you're questioning my decision. That makes me feel less confident. Do I own this or do I not? So we had all of these things going on. And because I had an amazing COO who would push back, we figured it out and we said, okay, this isn't going to work. She said, I need ownership and responsibility, and I will give you the accountability. And we were really clear on the outcomes. We shared with the entire company what the KPIs were. Every single week, we would look at, are we on track? Are we off track? Do we need help? So there was always a way to step in. So I would be in a weekly meeting. At the beginning, I was in the weekly huddles. Eventually, I was just in the weekly executive meetings, and my team would lead the huddles. But we had all the data. I could go in at any time during the day or night, no matter where I was in the world. I could see current revenue. I could see our dashboard. I would know exactly when anything was off. And then I could go back to my COO and say, hey, what's going on here? But because she saw the same things and we had absolute clarity and certainty, and so did the team, as to what we were working on and what the direction was, I didn't have to come to her because she already saw it. So I'd get a text saying, here's what's going on with this. I'm on it. Okay, boom. My mind is clear again. So it's systems, accountability, and also being able to keep control on some things, like my dashboard. Also finances, I always knew exactly where we were with our finances. And those are the two big things. If you're tracking your KPIs and you know where your money is, um, those are leading indicators. You can look at them on a daily basis. You're going to know something's off before something's off.
So is that your secret, Michelle? Is a good monitoring system that gave you all the right information you needed to know so that you could see if something was drifting off before it became an issue?
Well, so my COO could see if something was drifting off before it came an issue. Yes. But I think more importantly is getting clarity on what that is. The same way entrepreneurs are using job descriptions that are, out of a can or generic. A lot of them are also using KPIs that don't really track what they should be tracking in their particular business. So getting those two things aligned and knowing where we're going and why that's important, and knowing really what drives your business. So for us, it was a gross revenue driven business. So yeah, we could play with revenue, we could play with gross margin, we could play with net profit. But I looked at it the other way around. I never really I mean, it's not true. I did have revenue goals, but more importantly, I had bottom line goals, and we worked the other way up because I knew what my numbers
Yep.
were. So yes, the
Okay.
systems, the numbers, and the absolute clarity on what you're trying to accomplish and what you're having your team trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So vision and you mentioned culture also earlier, and systems and monitoring. Okay. So you've put all this in place, Michelle. Looking back now, what do you wish you'd done differently, or what do you wish you'd done earlier? And because we go through this journey and we learn along the way. If you were to do it all again, what would you do first, or up front, or what have you?
Um, that's a great question. Two things. One is I would have I would have thought bigger. What do I mean by that? I talk a lot about mindset for entrepreneurs and when I work with clients, mindset. So I had this number in my head that was as big as I could possibly fathom that I could achieve. And our beliefs hold us back so much. I remember once having a conversation with a coach, and he asked me, why are you not a $20 million business now? And I didn't know the answer. I know it now because that's what I could not think that big. I didn't think that
Yeah.
was possible. I didn't, you know, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different belief systems. And I got exactly my number. And it's very interesting how the world or the universe or whatever you want to call it works that way. And so going back, I would change, I would work really hard on my mindset to understand that the business, the capability could be much bigger. And so for other entrepreneurs who are thinking, oh, I'm going to build it to $1 million or $10 million, I leave that question out there. Why are you stopping there? And I'm by no means saying that only big business is good business. Like I had two kids and maybe that's why I didn't want to be away and that was a different path. But if it's just your holdbacks and your beliefs, question your number and see if it's really big enough. And the second thing would be holding back on things because you don't think you can do them without getting all the right information. So what that means, I could have 10 years ago done a bunch of acquisitions, but I didn't because I was scared and I didn't know how.
Yeah.
Right. And that strategy would have brought me a 10x exit or more. So those are the two things really, focus on your belief systems. And if you think it's a good path, don't dismiss it thinking, oh, that's too complicated. Do the research, do the homework.
Bring in the skills. Okay, so think bigger. Test your beliefs is what I think I heard there as well, and I guess effectively push yourself and go, why isn't this bigger? Which is a great basic question. I love the way you're thinking, and you've pushed yourself, and you've gone, okay, so what I needed is systems. I need to delegate. I need to let the people run it, and I needed good metrics so I could see what was happening. Michele, out of all the bits and pieces that you have shared with us and given us insight into your offboarding process for business owners to get them the hell out of the way so that their management team who they've recruited and paying good money for can actually
Right.
do their jobs, what's the key message that you'd really want listeners and business owners, I guess, who are listening today and listening to this episode, and they're right at the beginning of their journey, they're where you were at the beginning? What's the one thing that you think is the most important thing for them to hear from your experience?
As they're scaling up or as they're getting ready to exit, I just want to be clear.
As they're thinking about, hey, at some point I want to exit my business and I want to be able to do it cleanly and get the most from my life's work.
Learn. Talk to as many people as you possibly have access to. Don't believe your own presumptions. If something, if you feel passionate about something, you're going to find a way. From the offboarding point of view is really get clear on what you want your life to look like. First, I wouldn't have been able to do this if I had let my business drive me. And the goal is to have our business or businesses serve our lives, not the other way around. And so to remember you're in control here, you're in the driving seat, design what you want your life to look like, and then build your business or businesses around it. Look, we all have business plans 3, 5 years in the future, but we don't have life plans. And all of a sudden we end up and we're 45, 50, 55. And we're like, what happened? And I'm at that age now. And luckily I have no regrets because I did all of the things that I wanted to do. But there's only a finite amount of time. And I think that's my big heart message is, as entrepreneurs, who is better equipped to change the world through our business than we are? Who is better equipped to design their life in the business than we are? But yet we're working 60, 80 hours a week, burnt out, chasing tasks and not getting the real growth that we want and that we desire and that we deserve. So the very one thing is get clear on what you want your life to look like, because you're not just the entrepreneur and CEO of your business. You're first and foremost the CEO of your life.
That's a nice touch. CEO of your life, design your life. So, Michele, you've shared a lot of insights today, and you're doing it yourself. If listeners want to follow up and learn more about Michele Hecken, how do they get in touch?
Well, my website is michelehecken.com. As you can see it on the screen, Michele with one L. And Daryl, I think my team also sent you just a link to put in the show notes. Whenever I do podcasts or I'm a guest on a podcast, I usually offer listeners to have a quick chat with me, book a time if they want to learn more. So there's a link in the notes, I'm assuming, Daryl, where you can book a complimentary consultation with me. But this is only going to be live for a little while. So you have access to my calendar, book some time in. Is going to be blocked out down the road because I do a lot of podcasts and then I would get to nothing else but talking to everybody. And as much as I love that, I just don't have that much time. So yes, visit my website, reach out to me, shoot me an email, book a time. And if you want to hear more about what I have to say about exits, I mean, Daryl, you do such an amazing, amazing job helping businesses prepare for what is, for most entrepreneurs, one of their most important decisions of their career and of their business life, right? So all of the support is there. And so that's where you can reach me. And I do a very, very tiny, tiny little part of what Daryl and his company does. So I'm grateful that we get to be on this podcast together and share our knowledge to help more entrepreneurs have successful businesses and successful exits.
Thanks. Michele, we'll put all the links so that people can contact you in the show notes and on the website. Really appreciate you sharing your exit insights with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Daryl. Always lovely talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Exit Insights podcast. And if you have, now's a good time to subscribe and make sure you get notified of all future episodes. Now, if the topics have raised questions about the value potential in your business or how you will exit like a boss, then contact me and arrange a free strategy call where we can discuss what's required for you. Otherwise, if you'd simply like to learn more about how to prepare for when you want to exit, then you can download a copy of our ebook called It All Begins with Insights. The link is in the show notes. In this book, we'll show you how a business insights report can be used to assess your business to uncover your intangible assets and identify the value potential if you're ready for exit and your business is exit ready.